Hello, I'm Professor Rich and this is TYT History, where we try to put the big stories of the day in some historical context. Now, with the GSA scandal and the Secret Service scandal and the recent attempts this last week of Republicans trying to pin these on Barack Obama and make him take the fall, it reminded me, and I can't believe I haven't seen more of this in the news, of Iran Contra, the big scandal during the Reagan era. In fact, it kind of insults me that these Republicans think that we don't remember this and can't connect these dots. So let me talk about Iran Contra. When Reagan gets elected in 1980, he talks about taking it to the evil empire, trying to bring down Russia. And what he wants to do is create a Russian Vietnam and get Russia involved in some backwater somewhere and then have America support the other side in that war so we can bleed Russia both militarily and economically the way America was in Vietnam. Now, Ronald Reagan thinks this is going to happen in Nicaragua, where we have a group called the Contras, who are a right-wing group, fighting against a left-wing government, the Sandinistas. Now, the Sandinistas were pretty awful people, don't get me wrong, but the Contras weren't any better. The Contras' main way of waging war was attacking the civilian population as opposed to attacking the left-wing government. And they burned houses, they killed children, they raped women on a regular basis. And so Congress will pass something called the Boland Amendment, forbidding the Reagan administration from giving any sort of financial or military aid to the Contras. Now, while this is going on, Hezbollah, a Shiite group in Lebanon, will take 7 Americans hostage. And Reagan will be very concerned with getting them released. I'm sure because he wants to get Americans released, but he also remembers that it was the hostage situation in Iran that brought down the presidency of Jimmy Carter and got him elected. So to do this, he's going to begin giving, or actually selling weapons to Iran. Now, Iran supports Hezbollah and has close ties with them, and this group of Iranians will say that if they get weapons from the Reagan administration, they will talk to Hezbollah and see if they can't get the hostages released. Now, this is what we mean when we talk about Reagan negotiating with terrorists, which Jank brings up on the Young Turks all the time. And make no mistake, Iran was engaged in terrorism. Just one example would be William Buckley, who's a CIA bureau chief in Beirut, who's kidnapped by Hezbollah, sent back to Iran where he's tortured and killed. And of course, they did take these 7 American hostages. Now, the way we're going to do this originally is we're going to give the weapons to, or Israel, is going to sell the weapons to Iran. Then we're going to give weapons to Israel, which we do all the time anyway, of course. Then Israel's going to give us the money they got from Iran for the weapons. Reagan knew about all this, so there's no doubt. He freely admits at the time, he knew about all of that, and he simply said, I just needed to get the hostages back. That was his excuse for negotiating with these terrorists. And the first shipment goes through on August 20th of 1985, and one of the 7 hostages is released. Now, pretty soon, the project begins to get out of hand. Oliver North, or Colonel Oliver North, who's working for the National Security Council at the time, will begin taking the money that they get. Well, first off, he'll mark it up dramatically, and then begin taking the money they get for the weapons, putting it into a Swiss bank account, and then taking that money and giving it to the Contras to support their war in direct violation of the Boland Amendment. Now, this is the part where we have to ask, did Reagan know? Did he not know? There's no hard proof one way or the other, so it comes down to a matter of opinion. Now, they began to realize that their plan wasn't going to work, or it wasn't working very well, in September and October of 1986, when Hezbollah takes 3 more American hostages. Now, by this time, they had released 3, and it becomes, I think, fairly clear to most people looking at this that Hezbollah picked up these 3 new hostages to replace the 3 they lost, because this is a great business model for them. Take an American hostage, get a bunch of weapons, and release the American. Now you just go grab some more Americans, and on and on and on it could go. Now, the whole one more thing that's going on is the planes that are flying weapons down to Nicaragua and dropping the weapons off are flying back into America with Contras on them with cocaine, who are then selling the cocaine in America, which gives rise to this whole idea that the CIA brought the cocaine and the crack into the ghettos. Now, I don't think this was enough cocaine to explain the cocaine epidemic, but it certainly was not right, and it certainly opened up the CIA and the Reagan administration to this sort of criticism. Now, eventually, 5 of the original 7 hostages will be released. The other 2 will not be released. They'll be killed. Now, November of 1986, two things are going to happen. An Iranian leaks to a foreign newspaper the details of this arrangement. And that's actually not taken too terribly seriously, except very quickly after that, also in November of 1986, a Nicaraguan plane will be shot down, and a survivor from the plane will begin telling everybody that the guys he's working with are CIA, and that this is all an American operation. And this is going to blow the whole thing wide open. It's going to become public knowledge. Oliver North and his partner in this crime, John Poindexter, will begin destroying documents really at a massive scale, trying to cover this up. The Reagan administration will come out and initially deny it. Reagan will then say he'll take full responsibility for it. But as you're going to see, it's that kind of responsibility where nothing bad happens to you or any of your friends. You just say, I take responsibility, and then expect the whole thing to be over. The Attorney General of the United States, Edwin Meese, confesses that the whole thing is all true. So there's really no doubt this happened. The question is, how much did Reagan know? And that's what we begin to focus on. Reagan appoints a commission to investigate himself. It's called the Tower Commission, with 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, all 3 chosen by him. So take that as you will. This is also where Reagan is going to famously tell everybody he just can't remember. In fact, I can't recall will be the phrase that he uses over and over. He can't recall if he engaged in a conspiracy to subvert the United States Constitution and explicitly go against the laws of the United States. Seems like you would remember that sort of thing, but he was pretty old, so I guess people bought it. This is also where we get the idea of plausible deniability. This idea that as long as nobody can prove that I knew, you can go ahead and do it, because then I can always say I didn't know anything about it. And of course, honestly, I can't remember has become the standard excuse when you're clearly guilty, but you don't want to admit it. Now let's see. It's going to hit Reagan hard in terms of his public approval. November of 1986 will be the worst month ever in terms of a drop in public approval for a president. Reagan will start the month at 67%. He'll end it at 46%. He'll give this nonsense, I don't know what you call this, an apology? I don't know what this is. But he'll say this, my heart... he said, I told you I wasn't involved in this. And then he'll say, my heart and best intentions still tell me that's true, but the facts and evidence tell me it's not. Let's let that sink in for a minute. That's personal responsibility. That's really stepping up and the buck stopping there, isn't it? Anyway, of course, conservatives at the time, many of them the same exact people today who want to go after Ronald Reagan, wanted to go after Barack Obama, explained that Reagan couldn't be held responsible for this. He doesn't know what everybody in his administration is doing. I mean, how could the president know what his national security advisors are doing? I mean, these are people he meets with on a daily basis. And so when these people want to tell you that Barack Obama should be held accountable for the personal lives of his Secret Service agents, or for a conference the General Services Administration has, I just want you to keep in mind the fight over responsibility in Iran Contra and how Reagan just skated right through that thing. Now, 14 Reagan administration folks were indicted, but all of them will be either let go on appeal or will be pardoned by the George H.W. Bush administration. In fact, there's a great anecdote that goes like this. No one from the Reagan administration ended up serving a day of jail for the Iran Contra affair. But Poindexter, one of the key figures in this scandal, will have a street named after him in his hometown in Indiana. And a minister will steal the street sign. And he'll say, I'm going to hold this for ransom for $30 million, which, by the way, in 2012 dollars would be about $60 million, which is how much the American people were robbed to give these weapons to the Contras. He will get arrested and spend time in jail, and as Zen points out, he will be the only person to serve any jail time in the Iran Contra scandal. Another footnote, as Rachel Maddow pointed out in her show last week, Ronald Reagan tried to use a variation on the Nixon argument when he said, well, the president can do anything he wants to do in the realm of foreign affairs, so this clearly can't be unconstitutional. Similar to Nixon's, if the president does it, it's a legal argument. Nobody accepted this argument except for one guy, a House member named Dick Cheney, who stood up and said that sounded right to him. As for these current scandals, the GSA scandal, the Secret Service scandal, I don't like this stuff. I'm upset about it. I think heads should roll. But I do find it interesting, and I want you to keep in mind as we go into the weeks and the months to come, and you're watching somebody on Fox News calling for the president's head, or Congressman Issa demanding more and more investigations until they get something to take down the president. I just want you to remember back in the 1980s during the Reagan presidency, when Ronald Reagan diverted $30 million of American taxpayer money to provide weapons to terrorists in Iran, and then took the proceeds from that to illegally give money to revolutionaries in Nicaragua who were killing children and raping people. Now, maybe you think I'm a hypocrite. Maybe you say, well, you have a problem with what Reagan did, so why are you defending Obama? Well, right now there doesn't seem to be any evidence that the Obama administration covered this up or had any part in it whatsoever, or at least Obama himself. When we know that Reagan was involved in the Iran Contra affair, we can't prove that he was involved in the Contra part of it, but we certainly know he was involved in the Iran part of it. And the other thing is just like everything else, these things are not equivalent. I mean, an $800,000 party on the taxpayer's dime is bad, but it's not $30 million to terrorists and murderers. I mean, you can see that, right? It reminds me a lot of the reaction to Bill Clinton. When Bill Clinton got caught lying about his extramarital affair, a lot of Republicans seem to have this attitude of, well, you impeached Richard Nixon, or you didn't impeach him, but we were going to impeach Richard Nixon and he resigned over lying, so Bill Clinton certainly must be impeached and removed over lying. Yeah, but Richard Nixon lied about trying to fix a presidential election. Bill Clinton lied about cheating on his wife. I mean, do you really think those things are comparable? And then when Bill Clinton gets impeached but not removed, we turn around and they say, oh, well, George Bush lied, but Bill Clinton lied, so what's the difference? Well, the difference is Bill Clinton lied about having sex with an intern. George Bush lied us into a pointless war. I mean, if you can't see the difference between the GSA scandal, the Secret Service scandal, and the Iran Contra affair, I don't know how we're ever going to communicate effectively with each other. Anyway, this is Professor Rich. This has been TYT History. Check out my other videos on TYT Nation. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something.